The Lunar Club was created for spirit-first conversations that honor the divine feminine in us all. If you're craving more depth and authenticity in your life, then the Lunar Club can provide the medicine that you're looking for. My hope for you is to feel a little more loved and a little more connected every time you listen to one of these conversations. There's power in connection, there's power in our stories. Have fun and enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lunar Club. I don't even know. I'm broadcasting off my phone up north. It's so nice to see everyone. I always say it's not the same when we're not all physically connected, but I'm hoping that I can create a little bit of an energetic container for everyone and that we can feel connected. I want to start off just by thanking RBC Investees because they've generously supported us through this pivot and through this really trying time as we try to figure out the new way that we show up with our organization. And in lunar fashion, I first want to acknowledge the wonderful traditional territory that we're all gathered on. I know each of us are in different locations all around the world. For me right now, I'm actually up north in Bancroft, Ontario. And so this is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people and the territory covered by the Williams Treaties. I acknowledge that I'm a settler and I am always trying to continue my learning and my knowledge about what that means and about really trying to understand how to decolonize. So I thank you all. And so in proper lunar fashion, we always start with a performance piece, a piece of art to anchor us into the space. And so tonight we have a special surprise. This is actually one of our newest members of our team, Cassandra, who is also an artist and a spoken word poet. And so she has actually created a piece for us tonight. So I'm going to throw it over to her recording. She did it earlier this week in Lunar Studios, which I know many of you who have been coming to Lunar for a long time, you miss that space. So we always try to anchor it back in. So let me pass it over to Cassandra and we will get to hear her beautiful piece.
My poem is called Love Everyone. And before calling me a hippie and booing me off the stage, think beyond your page and free yourself from that cage, because I'm here to engage you today with my creation, deciphering information misunderstood in many nations. You see, to love everyone is an art that starts in the heart that does not fall apart. To love everyone is the need to speed up and feed the peace, love, and creed that we all contain, that love can obtain without effort or strain. But be careful, cuz you can make love and break love, but you can't mistake love, because when you feel love, real love, there's no need to heal love. You just know love and show love. Everything goes below love and love's on top. Your heart drops. You die when the love stops. But love lives on and holds on and stays strong for so long with all of its might, and it feels right. Sometimes it even blurs your sight, because love's risky. Love's frisky. Love's hard like straight whiskey. Love's crazy, not lazy. And love will always amaze me. Especially the love that comes from a place that sees no race and feels no disgrace towards cultural norms. It does not conform. It remains so warm throughout all of the storm. Especially the love that teaches the youth and preaches the truth and reaches and scoops out the best in all of us. See me? I try to love everyone that is under the sun. Especially you, hun, but since life has begun, there's been hate, torture, rape, despair, and it's unfair to think when we're not there, it shrinks, because every time you blink, somebody cries or dies, the things we all despise. So open up your eyes when we realize that love is such a prize. I look around and see so much love in this world. And it's because of you that the love is true. And you have no clue just how much this does, how before this was not the case, because some history is so dark. So you're making your mark by creating the spark that spreads the love and shreds the hate we dread so much. It's not too late and we cannot wait. So please keep changing minds by being kind and helping the blind understand and find that love truly is one of a kind. Spread that message around. It'll be bound to astound all around like I found. Such a simple, simple message. Just 2 words. Love everyone. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, Cassandra, thank you so much for sharing that piece, for writing that piece, for performing that piece. It literally just made me tear up again. And so perhaps we should anchor ourselves by acknowledging that we are gathered on the full moon tonight, and this magical big, bright moon is in the sign of Scorpio. And so Scorpio is a watery, deep, emotional, transformative sign. For me, in my sort of astrological makeup, my moon sign is in Scorpio. And so when this moon comes around, it has me a bit untethered. I feel incredibly kind of raw and emotional today. And when I just hear Cassandra's words, it is so true, I believe, that in this moment, at this time, when we have so much that's going on in the world, to remember that love, to remember to give love, to spread love, to be in love, to be in our hearts. And it's challenging. It's challenging right now. I know that for sure. It's challenging for all of us. So it feels like there's not the same energy as when we announce a special lunar guest. As you all know, we always keep our guests secret. And the reason why we've kept our guests secret for so long is because we believe that you end up in a lunar session when you're supposed to. And you end up meeting our special guest when you're supposed to. And the conversation that comes from each of the sessions is meant to be a bit of a surprise. It's meant to be for your soul, showing up and being in the space. And so I am so amped and excited to introduce our special, incredible guest for tonight. And this is the special thing about being digital and in the digital space is that we can bring guests from all around the world. And so today our guest is broadcasting to us from Memphis, although she's typically LA based. So Connie Lim is our special guest, who is the artist known as Milk. And so let me just tell you a little bit about Connie Milk. First of all, she's wise, and has become a really interesting friend for me because we met right after her song went absolutely viral during the Women's March in 2017. Her song Quiet ended up becoming really like the anthem of the Women's March, the anthem of the movement. In 2 days after Connie and a team of incredible a cappella singers started to perform the song Quiet in Washington during the march, it went viral. In 8 million views, I think, in 2 days, which was just unbelievable. And it catapulted Connie into a whole nother stratosphere of her work. And what I admire so much about Milk is that she really is a social change artist. She is a change activist, and she writes from that place of transformation, not only her personal transformation, but transforming communities, transforming minds. And so I find her very, very brave. And we got to fly her to Canada when we did our big kind of brave first stunt with Michelle Obama. So some of you may have been there. It was our Economics of Equality session with former First Lady Michelle Obama, and Milk opened up the session, and it was wow, like just goosebumps if I go back into that memory. And we didn't get to spend a lot of time together that day, but she had imprinted something in me, in my heart. She was mirroring something to me that I wanted to know more of in myself. And over the years, we've stayed in touch, and we've recently come back in touch again. And she's been on quite a journey of songwriting, of community activism, since Quiet. So has released 2 albums, This Is Not the End and Into Gold. And I have to say that a lot of her tracks have become favorited on my playlist, just daily parts of my routine and anthem, to listen to her ideas and the way that she captures something so authentic and raw and beautiful. So without any further ado, Connie Milk, thank you so much for joining us here today and for being our special guest. I'm so excited to have this very fun conversation with you.
Thanks for having me. And what an introduction. It's such an indication of how deeply you see the world and how open you remain as an adult, which is such a feat, I think, to stay in awe of the things around you. And I feel like you do that so well. Um, yeah, so I feel very seen and also very lucky because I feel like I'm in great company. I feel that I aspire to live with the same type of passion and vigor that you do. Like whenever we talk, it's just like we'll have long conversations about the world, about the things we're creating, so it's really nice to be here with you and to meet everyone on a full moon.
Yes, yes. Well, let's kind of anchor into our space before we go on this conversational journey. And I actually just, if Mira's here today, I just taught her this little practice. I call it the heart work practice. It was just taught to me by another incredible woman. And so what we do, if I can, is I'm going to ask everyone to just quiet themselves for a second and come into your own space that you're in your body. And I want you to start by picturing the energy that's in your mind. Now, some of us will see that as a bit chaotic. I want you to kind of picture a ball of energy that's in your mind, that's in your head. And I want you to see it moving quickly, slowly, however it shows up for you. Our intellect is powerful. Our minds are powerful. But sometimes it's important that we know how to move out of our minds and into our heart space. So I'm going to ask you to see that energy in your mind. And I'm going to ask you to pull that energy down into your heart space. And I want you to just feel into your heart space. If you want to place your hand on your heart space. And I want you to thank your heart space. And just connect with this part of you. Yes, this is the part that beats, that keeps you alive, that keeps all your blood pumping. But this is also the seat of the soul. This is your true essence comes from here. And so the practice is that I want you each to think about something that you are deeply, deeply grateful for. But the trick is that I want you to really feel what that feeling feels like. So for me, if I think about my children, I actually picture the little scent that's behind their ear when I sniff into their neck. So for whatever it is for you, I want you to really try to feel, sense. If it's a beautiful sunset or something you've experienced before, and really feel that sun on your skin. Feel the fresh air if you're thinking about being in nature, but feel it and feel that expansion in your heart. It is this space that I want us to connect from tonight. It is this space that I want to have this conversation with the beautiful and talented Milk, my friend, who I love, who does make something happen in my heart space. And so when we're ready, we'll come back into our digital little container here. And I'm so grateful for all of you to be here. Lunar Club is about this medicine that we get when we share and when we talk, when we laugh and cry and be honest and raw. And so this is where we'll begin. So when you're ready, you can slowly come back into the space. and we can begin from here. So I want to start off this conversation with you, Milk, and talk about bravery for a second, because I did mention that when I was introducing you, and I felt like that day that we met, we were both kind of being brave. You were being brave and sharing what is in quiet a very, very personal song and message, but it just so happened to connect with everybody in this very profound way. And I was being brave because I was trying to use my organization as a vehicle for something different for the first time by, doing that half the stadium gifted to young people. And it really did create this different essence and change. And so like my bravery saw your bravery. And I wonder, how did you get so brave to share such a deep message? And if you are open, can you tell us a little bit about what that song is about to you and then what it became to others?
So bravery, I've talked about bravery feeling like a muscle, and I grew up really hiding and not flexing that muscle. I was very good at staying soft and hiding in different shapes so that I wouldn't upset the people that I was with. I grew up in a home that, I had immigrant parents that held a lot of pressure in their own lives and love me deeply, also have many traumas that they're still processing. And they're incredible people. And that, however, the emotional sensitivity I had was something that was scary to them. So I grew up learning that my emotions were too much. And I think many of us can relate to that feeling, like we were told either we're not enough of something or too much, maybe both. And I have a connection with my body, and that when I feel a sense of heat in my body, it is like this really profound swell of heat that is usually in my chest, and I think we all feel it differently. So I welcome everyone to kind of think about, how does my body receive these feelings of? Sometimes I would have a feeling of wanting to dissent, like wanting to say no, and it just swelled. And for a while, I knew how to swallow it. And I think years of swallowing that heat created this ball of tension in my throat. And being a survivor of abuse from my first boyfriend, and feeling like it was my fault, because also cultural context, when I asked for help, I was then told that I was a slut. And so then I carried for me, probably for 14 years, a sense of shame. And all of these things don't go away, though. They don't just evaporate. Like, shame sits in our cells, and I could feel it. And eventually it's like what Anais Nin says about how it's just too painful to be a bud anymore. And like the flower just has to start blooming. And so I had to find small ways of practicing uncomfortable confrontation from something very small, like instead of lying to a friend saying, I have an assignment due in college, I was like, I'm tired and I want to rest. And that was a big step for me, because it would have been easier to just lie, but my spirit knew I was lying and I was betraying myself every time. Or, people making assumptions about me, and sometimes I would laugh them off in a social situation. And then I'd have to practice taking a deep breath and just trying. Like sometimes I couldn't even look people in the eye and try to say my truth. So that's how I started playing around with it. Music, though, is a place where it's free to me. I don't have to be Asian enough. I don't have to be American enough. I don't have to be feminine or masculine enough. I'm just a human yearning for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I remember reading a quote, and the closest thing I could find was, maybe it was a Maya Angelou quote, but it was phrased a little differently. It was, a woman who can sing is never caged, but always free, because we can release our spirit out into our surrounding and then send it into the sky. So as I was learning how to speak up, music was a place where I could just go full force because it was safe. I had melodies. Melodies felt like safety blankets. Rhythms, drums felt like my friends supporting me as I said things that I couldn't say in real life. And
Wow.
yeah, I think that's how Quiet, the song you mentioned, and for those of you who don't know, Quiet was a song I wrote for my own survival. I was told to keep quiet. I think there's many layers of the word quiet that has affected me. I have a very complex relationship with quiet, the word quiet, because I was taught that in my culture, this is very traditional, and it's not for everyone in my Chinese culture, but women with small mouths and big eyes are more attractive because we observe more and speak less. And that was something that I was told. And I know that's not every Chinese mother saying that. At the same time, walking into recording studios as a musician, I think I was assumed to be more quiet. And then, you know, in life, just trying to reckon with the sexual abuse, I also myself stayed quiet because I thought it was my fault. So I had to use that song to save myself. After I wrote that song, it was maybe a 3 to 4 hour session. And the song, the lyrics of the chorus came to me in a dream. My younger self was saying all the things that I wish I had said when I was younger, because I was starting to go to therapy, and it was all my subconscious was starting to play around with my reality. Just like, if I couldn't do in real life, my dreams were going to do it. And so, yeah, my dream was very vivid, and my younger self said 3 things I had never said in real life was, this isn't right, I need help. And then the third thing was, I can't keep quiet. And so then the song came to me, and then I felt lighter. I felt like I had lost 30 pounds. I felt like the song was my little like token of, I could look at it and it was like a sea scroll. It was almost like something that my younger self had sent to me in a bottle, you know, and I could hold the song. So yeah, it was just like you said, when people started making the song their own and translating into their own languages and harmonizing with it, I learned a deeper truth, was a few, that I'm not alone. And my experience of freeing myself in such an honest way, and I didn't have expectations of sharing the song at that time, but my process of healing myself just naturally healed others without me needing to strategize a marketing plan, needing to figure out how to make a song go viral. It was just an ache, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And that is what it felt like in so many ways. It was this aching that we all sort of felt and had, and it just lit, like it hit. And I knew in hearing it, even the first time I hear it, and every single time that I hear it now, and any time that you perform it, it does something. It always moves something in me or transforms something in me. And I want to start off just by saying, because I forgot, of course, but number one, for anyone in this space tonight, obviously this is a safe and sacred space, but we do speak raw and deeply, and sometimes that can feel triggering for people in various stages of where they are at with things. So the first thing I just want to say is that yes, we are going to speak deeply tonight as a warning. And if anyone is feeling that they need any support, you can reach out to us and we can connect you with support if anybody needs. If you feel at any time like you need to step away for a second, please, anyone feel comfortable to do that. And we are recording tonight to be able to take some snippets of our conversation, but no one will be featured or shared unless they are given the green light for that. So I just wanted to say those things, and coming back to this notion of quiet and what it meant for you. And I think I can really connect to that as like a perpetual people pleaser for my whole life. And for me, in my circumstance, I grew up in a home of, abuse and addiction. My parents and family members were struggling with alcoholism and other things. And so I learned how to be a chameleon in spaces. And I learned when to be quiet, and I learned when to be funny, and I learned when to, perform and when not to. And it's been really challenging for me to uncover myself in all of that, because I became it was second nature for me to be whatever anyone wanted me to be. And I think these last, couple of years for me have been, you mentioned this ball that you could like tame, that heat. And I know exactly what you're talking about. And for me, I kept it in my stomach. And I've shared with you before, like when my sort of big wake up moment where I was like, my reckoning, I guess, where I couldn't keep quiet anymore, was this fire in my stomach that just like, I couldn't survive it anymore. It's like it had to come out. And I feel that with quiet, even when I watched back to the march and the video that went viral, there was just this like energy circling around you as you were singing it and as you were saying the words. And I wonder what that felt like for you when that took off. Like, what did that feel like to all of a sudden go from the artist that you were to literally like shot and catapult into fame? Like, what did that feel like, and how did you keep your ground during that moment?
I would say, thanks for sharing your story too. It's, I think, as I watch you share your story, it gives me encouragement because of the light you provide. And, it's in conjunction also with that darkness you had to overcome. So that's very powerful. I felt, I remember, how some people give us advice about our careers and they tell us, like, I remember as I was coming up as a musician, people were like, you know what you should do? I was like, what? They're like, you should go on Ellen. You should sing your song on Ellen. I'm like, thank you for the tip, or different things like that. Or like, or you should go viral. You should make a video to go viral. And that really daunted me.
Go viral.
Go viral. That word, very different meaning now. But what I remember feeling like I don't know how to cater to the cool kids. And when this happened, I was like, oh, right. Actually, it's on a napkin here. My friend asked me to write on a word that I'm really thinking about a lot on a napkin. So it's backwards, but it says trust.
Yeah.
And I think as a human in this world, for me personally, I've experienced a lot of things that have made me lose trust in others, lose trust in myself. But in that moment, I remembered, oh, right, but there's this deep carnal trust that awaits for me and for me to hold its hand, and life starts feeling like a collaboration with the energies that are around. And I remembered as like, right, because this is things that we go through all lead to our next step, and all the things I had gone through made me write that song to bring me to this moment. And I would cry every video, every cover song, every tweet. Like I had a flood of emails that I still haven't caught up on from people sharing their stories of survival, deep stories. And that was a lot to hold. And when you ask me how I stayed grounded, I think that I had spent most of my career offering and having the support of my friends and stuff, but not quite feeling like there was a flood. And so when the flood came, I was so grateful, and also trying to listen to all and to read all the stories, go back. And I after a week after 2 months, I unknowingly burnt out. I didn't know what burnout was, but I did burn out. So it was like this high and this awe. And then it was a burnout. And then I started learning about the things that I still haven't healed in myself needed to be healed in order for me to handle the attention and the opportunities coming towards me. Like I relate to you about the people pleasing. And I relate to that because I'm also a shapeshifter. So there's maybe shifters in the room. And learning how to not read a room to become the room, I was learning how to stay me and allow for a room to adapt to me. That I'm still learning how to do that.
Yeah.
And so I started learning, sometimes I don't see the light within me that people are telling me about. And I'm struggling with that. And I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. And so I turn to music over and over again. Like I use music to write myself into existence. Like Quiet was a song that my soul yearning knew it needed to write. My human ego self is learning that and has spent the past 4 years learning that. Quiet has brought me into activist space, social change spaces, and I've caught up with it. And after the Atlanta shootings, I felt, part of my imposter syndrome is rooted in my experience of being a woman of color, of being an Asian woman, and not feeling like I can belong completely. Instead of I think, therefore I am, I adopted, I excel, therefore I am, right? I do, therefore I am. And I mourn that, and I still have to address it because it's habits, but I just recently wrote a song called I Belong, and that'll be my new song that I'm releasing next month. And I'm excited about it because I had to channel the pain of what's been happening in the hatred towards AAPI people, the xenophobia. I've had to channel that and turn it into something that is going to serve me and people. Like it's I belong, and eventually the song swells to we belong to each other and kind of comes back to that. So I'm writing that into existence now. And I think when Quiet went viral and I was like, I don't know how to sit in this self-value. I don't know what that is. And I signed a contract with Atlantic Records. It's like, I think there's a part, I just noticed that there was a part of me that couldn't believe it was happening. And I was like, I have to address that. So
wow. The fact that you are even so aware of that and that you were so tapped into all of those pieces, I mean, firstly, I greatly admire that. But I also think that that's your solace. Like that's your saving grace. That's what allows you to connect as deeply as you do. And it's that like sense of awareness that you have through the process. And I know exactly, I don't know exactly because I don't have the same experience, but I know the burnout piece first. In doing work where you are opening up that vessel in folks and allowing people to be heard, and providing that kind of medicine that many of your songs provide. And it's not just quiet. I want to talk a little bit about Somebody's Beloved, as well. And it sounds like this next song that you are writing right now, or about to release, is going to do the same thing. But there's this sense, and I don't know if it's part of what it means to be a woman in the world, but it's like, I have to keep being of service. Like, I can't ever not be of service. So I can't take that moment for myself. And I remember feeling, so many times in my life where I wanted to, like, every single person that would be touched by something, I wanted to give them the same vigor of love and like acceptance and like show up. And I was like, I'm going to prove to myself that I can. And that's how I've burnt myself out really badly, because I want to like give all my heart to every, interaction, because that's where the work's coming from. And that is a really hard thing to sort out, or to figure out that that's actually not always possible. And I even remember it was way worse after we did the huge event that we did in January 2020 with President Obama. I was really ill after it, like, and I mean, in every way, like spiritually, emotionally, energetically, I just was ill from it. It was like I sucked everything in and tried to give everything out, and did not find my equilibrium. And even after the Michelle Obama stunt, I remember the next day, like I just got a fever instantly, and was like, just like weeping in my bed, but weeping about the stories that were coming forward and through, and just knowing like, this is just such a small fraction. Like, this is one piece. Like, how do we hold the container for all the love that's needed for like every person that's needed to be seen? And so I guess my question for you is, how do you manage your heart? Because you have a big heart. And I imagine that you sent me this beautiful gift about how to like take care of yourself when you're working with those that have experienced trauma. And I just wonder like what your practice looks like, and how you prepare yourself now, and if it's changed from when you first started.
That's a great question. I also am curious about your techniques too. I usually adopt words, like it's usually one word that I will focus on until it has worked its magic on me. And so right now I'm working with the word slow. And I think the root of slow is actually trust. So I think, but I want to practice slow. So I have a new mantra, which is turning into a song, but it's like, slow me down, love, slow me down. Don't want to miss the gift, love. Keep my feet on the ground. And so when I am rushing, or when I am having many things to accomplish, or scrolling, comparing and despairing, or different things like that, I just remember slow, and I'm allowing myself to go slow. I was like, why not? What if for 2 days I just allow myself to be slow? What is going to happen? And then instead of getting less done, I found that I got to float into the river of energy that is all around us. Because I was slow enough to have enough energy at the end of the night, where I picked up my guitar and I just started playing for fun. And I was like, oh, I get it. More slow, more flow. So that's the word that I'm focusing on now. In terms of like how to keep myself feeling grounded, I'm not perfect in this. My partner sometimes will be like gently reminding me to go gentle with myself. And so I'm constantly playing with it. I don't think there's a perfect balance. I think sometimes it's managing extremes. Like with you, I was just like, when you were telling the experience of feeling like ill after you gave so much, and I was thinking, well, I wish I had a morsel of wisdom, but I also was just witnessing you and being like, but you're on your journey of figuring out that dance, and sometimes it will be extreme and sometimes it won't. And there's something beautiful about that feminine divine energy, which is, we're not consistent and it's not structured. It's just kind of wild,
Yes. I that resonates so much. And it's supposed to be that. It's supposed to be ever flowing like the water. And I think it's making peace with that. And, even today, like, I still have that programming around like, I'm too much sometimes, or like, even today, like this moon is impacting me, or maybe just the day is impacting me and I'm blaming the moon. But I just wanted to act up today. Like, I just wanted to cry. I just wanted to say to my partner, like, I can't, or like, I don't want to, or this isn't possible anymore. Because it's hard. Like, we're in this lockdown, and the kids and the homeschooling and the working and the everything. And I have been so together for, I don't know, at least a few weeks. So I was like, there's gotta be some room for me to just lose it here for a second. But part of me wants to do it and like see the reaction. It's like, I'm always still testing the ground to see, if I'm allowed to be all that I am. And one of the things that I really learned in, after getting really sick and burning myself out many times, is that sometimes the place that I'm giving from is like this desperate place inside of me that is still not validated or valid. And I really recognized it the last big show before this pandemic with the President Obama. It was just like an unruly sort of schedule that we put ourselves into, trying to pull this together in 6 weeks. And it just like put everyone to the extreme. And it was, I'm constantly like rebelling against the system all the time. And that's fine. But what I needed to recognize is that there's this like rebellious little girl in me still that was rebelling to be recognized by my mom or my, absent father or whatever else. And that there's still this part of me when I push to that extreme, although I may want to say that it's rooted in like this kind and compassionate, loving, giving, there's also the truth is like, there's this other part of me that still is trying to be seen. And I'm trying to make peace with that. And I wonder, in your activism and in your work, where did the unhealed parts of you trip you up or trick you?
Such a great question. I love that. No one's ever asked me that. But I talk about this with my partner all the time. We talk about how our traumas, like even how our traumas inform our actions sometimes without us realizing. And my unhealed parts are like, one of them is I excel, therefore I am. That feeling like I'm the second of two daughters. I have a younger brother, I'm middle child. My sister was certified a genius when she was young, and she followed a more traditional path. My sister and I have a beautiful relationship. We are yin and yang, so different. And she's more of what my parents hoped I would be. And so I have this sense of not feeling enough, because ever since I was young, getting an A wasn't enough, because I was never tested to check if I was a genius. Well, I was like, well, she's a genius. So, and she skipped, I think she skipped they skipped her 3 grades, and it was too socially awkward. So she only skipped 1 grade. That's like my sister. And she got into medical school age 16, like guaranteed admission at USC. Crazy.
What?
Yeah. So
this is like a movie. Oh my gosh.
yeah, maybe one day
She got into medical school at 16. We have to make a documentary, like call Byron Wong right away.
And so I think I always wanted to differentiate myself and show my value in a different way. And because my actual innate value made my father uncomfortable, I just never felt like I was lovable. So hence, when I walked into studios after producers asked me to go there, I would have the most anxiety walking in because I was like, they're going to see I'm not that genius child, and or like over preparing for something and not being vulnerable because I was like trying to just be like, look, I'm perfect. And what I've realized now, I'm taking a different approach, and I'm just like, I will say 2016, when Trump got elected in the US, I learned something. I was like, wow, there are some people in this world who are so unable to be vulnerable that like when I see Trump, I see pain. I see so much pain. And I was like, maybe if I can just be more vulnerable, maybe at least like one or two people I cross paths with in this lifetime will feel a little more willing to have what Brene Brown says, the soft front and the hard back.
Yeah. I love that concept. I love everything that you're saying right now. And I think vulnerability is such a powerful medicine, but it also can set people off. And I know, like, I've had moments where I've been giving talks and like I've had people straight up like leave the room, like just can't handle what I'm saying. And that's okay too. Like we're all in different, I'm doing this really like spooky lighting thing. I don't know what's happening here. But I just, yeah, I a lot of what you said resonates with me again in a different way, but this notion of like not good enough or, and you're saying you were over preparing. One of the things that I do, is I under prepare, like purposely, because so if I like kind of wing it and I don't fully give it my all, then if it goes wrong, then I have this like protection where I didn't fully fail because I didn't fully plan it out.
Right. Yeah.
And it's this,
yeah.
So I'm like, oh, but like, this is another way that I like sabotage. And it's just really, really interesting, how these little traumas and triggers and things that happened in our childhood show up in the world. And, and then when we think of the collective energy, like we all have our individual stories, but there's also this collective trauma around like what it means to be, a Chinese American, or what it means to be, a woman from, a low income space. Like the word that like is my kind of trigger point is like that white trash. Like that to me is like, what we were called. Like that was the reason why I became like a liar as a little girl, because I would make up these fantastical stories of why I had to stay in the city housing that I was in. And like that my mom is actually like off in this mansion, and like my little body would like hold those lies. And then I programmed that like I'm going to be found out or something. And this was true in the time I was like telling these tales and then like couldn't keep track of it all and was so little, didn't realize why. But what's really interesting now is that like that still, even though I'm like in my full honesty, I still underneath like rooted, like feel like I'm up to something. Like it doesn't go away. So I again, and I think what I'm trying to do is just normalize for everyone here that we all have work to do, and that's okay. And what I love about you is that you're so open about your journey of transformation. Like you're open about your therapy and like all the different things that you do to hold yourself accountable to be your best self, whatever that looks like. And sometimes that's dealing with whatever little trauma or trigger is coming up. Like there is no end point in this journey, I think. But when did you finally recognize or realize like, okay, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to do therapy, or I'm going to go deeper. Like how did you get to that point?
Yeah. Your story, it could be a movie as well. Your little younger self. I could see a movie of this mischievous little girl finding herself, but underneath was that desire to belong. And I realized I was having an issue. I was going to say one of the other unhealed traumas that sometimes shows up is like because I was sexually abused, I sometimes doubt my ability to say no and to set my boundaries. So sometimes I get really down on myself if I feel like someone is trying to take advantage of me business-wise. Like they'll try to negotiate something that's like, oh my God. Like recently I just wrote a song for a movie, and they were being very aggressive with their negotiations. And it wasn't just a business negotiation for me at that point, because it went to the trigger of like, oh, it's because I'm that woman who doesn't know how to say no, and they can see it on me because that's how I used to be. And so then I was so emotional, I couldn't see how to move forward, and I had to really work on it. And I had to acknowledge how the heat that was coming at my body, and eventually calmly fended for myself. But it just took me a little more time. The thing that made me realize I needed to seek help, there's a couple things, a couple phases. My younger part of my life, when I wrote Quiet, as I was in 2015. And from 2013 to 15, I started going to therapy because when people asked me what I wanted for my life, they were like, think big. And I couldn't think big. They're like, what if you could do anything? I just couldn't. I felt like I was hitting up against the ceiling, like Alice in Wonderland, kind of like stuck, and she couldn't grow bigger than the house, but she was like too big for the house and her head's hunched over. That's how I felt like. And I thought there must be something going on with me, because when someone asks me what I want in this world, I don't know. Because like you had mentioned before, it's like, I also didn't know who I was because I did so much shape shifting. So I needed to go back to that. And then I have returned to therapy because I have extreme anxiety, which creates this physical reaction of acid reflux. And it gets to a point where I have pounding headaches. And then I wasn't able to relax. I didn't know how to relax, but I was also working myself too hard. So that has been the journey now of really exploring what parts of what is happening and what makes me feel like I don't have value if I'm not achieving. And I've done a lot of healing with it. I think I'm getting to a point where, like, that's why I'm focusing on the word slow. You know, like what does life look like if I allow myself to learn the names of the trees in my backyard? Wow. There's this really cool app called iNaturalist, and you can take a picture of a tree and it'll use a technology to look at all the images of trees in the internet. And then it will be like, you are looking at a dogwood tree. And it's just really cool. So now when I'm walking, I go, oh, that's a dogwood. That's a maple. That's a cherry, oak. And like, so I'm starting to, because I think that's part of the healing for the revolution.
Yes, it is.
If I don't know the trees in my neighborhood, how am I going to want to save them? You know?
Yes. And okay, there's so much to break down there. And I apologize because I can hear my kids, so I know everyone else can with their kids, and that's what they do. Right. But okay, so first piece is the anxiety piece. I can completely relate to. I was having such intense panic attacks, and mine started for me when I was about 16, 17. And there was just nobody talking about mental health or anxiety or any of that when that was happening. And so I really, truly internalized again, like there's something deeply wrong with me. I'm not normal. I'm not safe, like all of those pieces. And again, I think that it's that slowness or that presence that can really pace that or slow that. But our society and usually the coping mechanisms that we use to make ourselves feel okay is the opposite, is like the work, is the productivity, is all of those pieces. Sorry, guys, you have to quieten it down a little. And so for me, like, you know, and I've shared this publicly, but like I struggled really badly with alcohol for a long time because it was the only way that I knew how to slow myself down. But then it came with all this other mucky stuff I didn't want. And I perpetually just got used to that feeling of just basically being like sick and hungover. It was like the only way. And when I took that out of my life, and it's coming up to 4 years that's been removed from me, thank you. It is huge. It's in my lineage. It's what really destroyed my household and like my family. And then I was doing it to myself. And it was like that poisoning of that little girl. And so I had to make peace with that. But when you say that knowing the names of the trees is part of the revolution, like you give me such a chill, and also such a, like, there's such validation in hearing you say that, because I think that our softness and our slowness, all of us, is what we use to fight this war. And it's like in those moments when we recognize that the clover on the ground isn't a 4-leaf, but a 3-leaf, but we're looking, is when we actually get to start to acknowledge that beauty and that essence of universal energy, and like that source energy. And that's the medicine. Like that's where it rests. And the anxiousness and anxiety is when we're allowing the system once again to tell us what makes us worthy and valid. And you have a really beautiful kind of grasp around that in terms of like the time is running out thing, especially for women, and like how that is connected into ultimately the patriarchy as well. Like, tell me how you're embracing, as you grow and as you unfold and as you grow wiser and get older, how you know that is like you're safe there. Because I think a lot of us feel like there's going to be something taken away. Like there's only this small amount of time that a woman can make an impact, and then we are done. And that is also that system talking. But what's your view on that?
Great question. Another great one. Ariane in for the win. I would say that I grew up learning exactly what you said. There's like a timeline. Oh, especially being a singer. Like even in the system, when I was in the system, because I'm 34, going to be 35 this year. I remember when I was in my early 20s and I graduated from UC Berkeley, moved to LA to pursue music. And they were like, well, you're kind of running out of time. You got to get it, you know? And people were literally not telling their real ages. Like I had a dear, beautiful friend, like love her and just a ray of light. But she's like, I've been 27 for 4 years because, and I was like, wow. And I remember when I turned 27, I was like, am I going to do what she did? And I took the leap of faith. I was like, you know what? I'm going to say I'm 28. I'm going to say I'm 29. And then I made up this, I was like, words are so powerful. So I was like, I'm level 34 and my mother is level 66. And that is so amazing. You know, like a birthday is leveling up because literally we get to be on the planet one more year. There is so much pain and suffering, and it's also a miracle and beautiful. And so I see it kind of as a badge of honor. And so I've actually done a thing, and, you know, people kind of go in and heal their inner child. And and there was this one exercise that someone was like, okay, look and close your eyes, and you're going to climb a hill. You're going to climb a cliff. You're going to climb a cliff. At the top of the cliff is like someone that's waiting for you, that you can trust, that you just so respect. And so picture that person. Everyone can do that now. You can think of as you're climbing up this steep, steep cliff, and you're going to get to the top, and there's going to be a plateau, and there's someone waiting for you that's going to hold their hand out. And I immediately pictured a woman with long gray hair, and she is my 80-year-old self. And so I oftentimes, when I am trying to, when you led the breath work in the beginning, which is so important because it helped me get into my my body and my heart, like I do go back to like that wise woman. Maybe it's an ancestor, I don't know, but I think it's future me, and I just try to live with her here. And yeah, I think it's just so exciting right now because we have technology that allows us to create lives for ourselves. It does dictate, like, if we allow it to, social media and all that can dictate, and we can feel like a slave to it. So we do need to create our own freedom and decide on how we're going to interact, what boundaries, how am I going to make this machinery work for me versus how am I going to work for it. And I'm still figuring that out, but I've allowed myself to not post for a while because I want to integrate all the information I'm getting post Atlanta shooting in the United States. And I'm trying to understand how I want to be, what I want to say, because it's so important to me, you know? And I just think that we can create these ecosystems where we are not obsolete. But if we're trying to strive into the existing one that's telling us that, you know, we're not really of value after our years of fertility, then yeah, that's going to be the stressfulness, and we're going to be afraid of aging, and that's normal. We're in the system. I felt it, but I do think something is bubbling, and we're really blessed in a way to be in this time.
I couldn't agree more. I do think that it's part of the revolution again is to like reclaim age. And also, like, one of the ways I always joke about it, and I say, I'm like, guys, we're being really mean to the old people. We're being really mean to the young people. We're being awful to the planet. Like, this is just all symptoms of the sickness right now that we're suffering from. And it's that lack of presence. And it's that, you know, that linear mindset towards one thing, which is, you know, productivity at all cost and, you know, material accumulation at all cost. And I want to reject that notion. And part of that rejection comes from like connecting to that higher self that you're saying. You know, you see it as that future self. And I had a similar experience. One of my most profound experiences in meditation came when I was at this retreat center, and I was just learning how to meditate. It was early on in my sobriety, and I was there, and I saw this woman, this ancient, like, you know, it seemed like 1,000-year-old woman. And I loved her so much. And I was like, is that my grandmother? Like, who? Like, I just didn't know. And then all of a sudden I realized it was me. And it was this awakening, this reckoning, this moment of like, there's something so much greater about who I am. And like the age of my soul and what this all means. And it was just, I don't know. It's so interesting that you also have, you know, that similar kind of viewpoint. And I think it's important that we connect to whatever of ourselves that is, and honor that.
Right. I saw so many images of young women in magazines, on billboards, like a certain body type, a certain look. And so I'm like, I'm just going to create billboards in my mind of like beautiful elder woman and different types of women so that I can decolonize my mind. That's been my new thing too, with slow. Slow is part of how do I decolonize my mind, because it is colonized. It is like,
oh God, yeah.
Isn't there? And I will say, as a musician, I just left Atlantic Records. I was with them for 4 years. And I remember when I first signed with them, I immediately I got to perform well. I got to do to a point so that like, I'll never leave this deal, because it'll mean that I'm just like continually thriving in this ecosystem. And then I just wasn't happy. And I remember being a young musician and being like, I don't know what it will look like to be in my late 30s as a female musician, because we didn't really have many. So we just have to create new realities. And I'm just reminding myself, I shall be audacious enough to say that I will continue to see myself however I want and continue making the art however I need to. And I will trust that a way will come. And if it's meant to be, I will find a creative way to release that music. And right now I'm finding creative ways of working with brands that I believe in to help me release my music. And so now I feel like I'm puzzle piecing things, and it feels very free.
I mean, again, it comes back down to that bravery, and, you just saying like, nah, like this doesn't feel right for me. Nah, like it just doesn't feel right. And so, I mean, that was huge. I think I remember talking to you as you were going through that and making that decision. Yeah. And like, of course there's me who's like, do it.
Yeah. You're so encouraging.
Anytime we can like leave a system or leave a man, like leave it, like I'm all for it. But it's hard and it's different. And I guess, for me, before I invite Asil on with you for a few minutes to talk a little bit more about the money piece and the economy piece, I just wanted to kind of end off, and forgive me if this is not a sensitive way to end off, because I can't imagine what your experience is right now, being in the US right now, being a Chinese American, going through, and I know how deeply you've been feeling all of it. I know what the Black Lives Matter movement means to you. I know what you've been doing on the ground in community and the different organizations you've been supporting and working with. But how does it feel right now to be in your skin in this time? And where are you at with how it all feels and how you're responding to that?
Thanks for asking. Atlanta was very hard. It was a breaking point, and I was sobbing. And this is also, in context, I had spent the last half year releasing a song called Somebody's Beloved in attempt to express this desire to learn how to be an accomplice to the Black community for the Black Lives Matter movement. And, my co-writer shared his experiences directly in his community and the pain he was feeling. And I was channeling and trying to figure out a way to write something that could just go straight to the heart. So I was already in this space of like trying my best to empathize with a community that has been dealing with so much oppression for so many centuries. And seeing that this oppression, it's like a wheel of misfortune, right? And it's like we spin the wheel and all the different communities of color are just waiting to see which one is going to be next. And the wheel of misfortune, hit on East Asians. And what was the hardest of this was actually telling people that it was racially motivated, because most people were like, well, was that a hate crime though? Because he didn't say like he was going to kill Asians. It's like, well, he did say that he wanted to eliminate temptation. And when he views Asian women as temptation, he's bought into some type of dehumanization of people, of a community of people, and that dehumanization led him one step closer to being okay with eliminating them, killing them. And so we spent weeks explaining to people as we were grieving for our community, we were having to defend our grief. So it felt like this double, it's like with assault, when in the Me Too movement, there's a second assault from the first, because the second assault is when people don't believe you. And you're like, wait, and then you have to go through the labor of trying to convince, like trying to share why you feel like it is a legitimate, like, racial issue. And the fact that we're like, when the shootings happened and I learned that 6 Asian women were killed, I was like, oh no, is this part of the AAPI hate movement? And the fact that I had to wonder, because there's already been a swell of those things, was already an indication enough. And, you know, in public areas right now, I go for walks, and sometimes I'll go to the grocery store, and I do wonder, every time that someone passes me, I do wonder, am I okay with this person, or am I not okay with this person? Are they going to say something? And so it's a daily little drip. It's like drip.
And has that always felt that way for you? No. So this is now, this is your reality now. This has not always been how you have felt walking through the world. And I think that's really important for people to understand, because I think that nobody can understand what the experience is for somebody to walk in your skin and feel unsafe. And that is, it's critical. I think it's critical for people to understand that that's where it's at right now. And what do you think we do to, I don't want to use the word eradicate, but like, how do we heal from this particular piece right now?
I think that there's going to be millions of different ways that everyone can heal. And for me, as someone who is Asian American, and so when I say this, I obviously cannot speak to any other communities of color's pain in knowing it inherently, but I will say that as an advocate, as someone who is wanting to advocate for the Black Lives Matter movement, and I do every day. I don't want to claim that verb, but I desire to, and I try every day. For me, I realized, I was like, I had a mourning and a sadness, you know, and I felt this, and also being like, okay, through this sadness, how do I keep creative and energized in helping communities that I care for? When it happened to my community, because the pain is so visceral directly to me, I did have that grief and sadness, but then it immediately, pretty quickly turned to survival instinct of, I cannot be a victim in this. And I will not be painted as weak, or I want to be painted. I want to paint myself as vibrant and alive and belonging. So immediately I started imagining the things that I wanted for me and my community. And so I'm in a space of like, I think it's kind of a adamant refusal of that treatment to myself. And so it's like continually to paint. I'm writing peace into existence through my artwork, through my actions. And I do see this as a painful time. And I also see it as a necessary time, because things are just getting revealed. And what is happening right now is very exciting, because communities of color are starting to bridge, and, you know, people who are a peer of dominant culture are also reaching out and trying to figure out. There's a lot of conversations happening in specifically with this AAPI issue. I have goosebumps. I have never before spoken so honestly and openly or I have never had such open and honest conversations with my fellow Asian siblings. I've been like, I've been the one who's been talking about sexual assault, like talking about politics out loud. I've been kind of the one who can't keep quiet. And I've performed in stages where predominantly my audiences have not been Asian. And I've always been like, where are my Asians at? And right now, I'm starting to have these conversations with them that are more open, because I think there's a yearning to be like, wait, we belong too, right? And so, oh, wait, those things, those little moments of racism, we didn't make them up. So we actually have something to rise up against. And that unity is going to be very powerful. My hope is that my community learns also to use this. And my hope is that we channel this energy to build bridges with Black, brown, white communities, so that we can create something new. It's happening, and the conversations are bubbling. So there's hope.
I think that is, I mean, that reckoning, that awakening, that seeing what is, and being able to speak about it and call it what it is, and know it, and share it, is part of what this moment is. And it's part of the beauty of this moment, despite the immense suffering and pain. That pain and suffering isn't new. It's always been there. And I think that for sure. It's rooted in our history, and it colors our ancestry, and it's intergenerationally passed until there's a generation that awakens to it and says no. And I do believe that is what we are entering right now. And there is so much, still to unpack in that. And I don't want to simplify what this is at all. But I do think that there are bridges that are being formed that just were never there before. And this, to me, I mean, the permission to feel that there's something to rise up against, is a part of it. Like, and that really resonates for me in you saying that for your community right now, it's people actually saying, wait a sec, like, oh, so all those things that were happening, those were real, and those were valid acts of racism and prejudice. And we are able and allowed to rise up and stand up and speak about this. And we are too included in this great reckoning moment. And I think that is the secret medicine. That is the secret that ignites the flame of this revolution, that ignites the flame of this great awakening. The pain does. And the pain, when we allow ourselves to feel it and speak of it and build community around it and cry out against it, that is what gives the momentum to start to turn and change and shift and reset and revalue. And that is what this time is about. So thank you for sharing this space and this conversation with me. And I admire you so much, and I learned so much from you. I'm so excited that we could share this space with everyone. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a seal up from our team. So for all of you that are here right now in the Lunar space, you know that we have recently launched a membership, and part of that membership is we offer something called our economic healing sessions. And the reason why is because, the system and the currency of this system, which is money, has been part of the poisoning of a lot of things, even though money is a neutral sort of energy. And I think, Connie, you have a lot to say about that. There's been a lot that we have to kind of break down around it, especially as people that want to make transformation and change and build a more conscious economy. And so Asil being a true economic healer and someone who has cultivated that experience is leading those sessions for us. And I'm going through that process with her right now, and it's been profoundly beautiful. So I'm going to call Asil up and pass you over to her gently for her to finish off this conversation. And thank you so, so much again. I'm here and I'm listening, and yes, so I'll pass it over to Asil.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Hi, Will. I've been listening and taking notes and being impacted both in my body and soul. And it's been very profound listening to you. So thank you for all your sharing. And there's a lot of amazing nuggets that you and Rhiannon both shared with us tonight. So my goal is to actually shed the light on the area of money. And it's a very interesting angle for many people, because it's a topic that generally we don't dedicate time to think about, let alone understand and incorporate in our lives in ways that truly represent who we are. So it remains to be this ambiguous complexity. And the goal of having conversations with the guests that we have with us is to simply start just like not having that topic a taboo and just normalizing talking about it and breaking the money silence. Mm-hmm. So I would love to start by asking you, like, how is your relationship with money today, and how has it transformed throughout the times?
It's a great question. I love that you talk about breaking that money silence, because my relationship with money really changed when I had a girlfriend say to me, I love money. And I was like, oh, we were just like hanging out and I was younger. And I was like, oh, she's talking about money, because no one ever talks about money. She's like, I want to make more of it. I want to flow with it. I want a lot to come in and a lot to go out. And I was like, that sounds pretty good. You know, we started talking about it and she's like, yeah, like more women need to talk about money, like, because it'll help us create the relationships that we want to have with it. And so then we started talking about money, like, oh, well, how do you deal with your money? Like, do you also get anxiety when you log on to your account? Like, do you also like kind of put that stuff off? And so we could kind of talk about it, and it normalized those nervousnesses and helped us feel out how we want to take agency and not have the concept of money control us, but have a healthier relationship with it. Mm-hmm. My relationship with money has been a lot about trusting in my ability to be present in every moment, to seek out the opportunities that I need in order to support myself, which I need to believe in my present self and my ability to be present in 5 years, because I can't make I don't want to make too many scarcity decisions worrying about future self in a way that will inhibit me from taking healthy risks now. Mm-hmm. Like, if I can take healthy risks and invest in some of my art in a more radical way, I'm actually signaling to my inner self that I trust that I will be okay in the future. Mm-hmm. And that's been me experimenting with, how do I, like, even with as a signing to a record label, I don't know if everyone knows here, but the way it works is we get paid an advance, and that advance could be a good amount of money. And then that's technically like a loan, because everything we make from our music then kind of chips away at that advance that they gave us. And then I won't make any more money until I've paid off that whole advance from them. And sometimes that feels comforting to be a part of something that can give a big advance, but leaving the label, I'm actually trusting in the relationships I've had, and if I'm offering music that is that feels honest to me. And if I find the right communities that also value it, we can find mutually financially beneficial ways of trading art for money.
Very interesting that you say that, because one of the things I try to help people explore is that time relationship in such a way where if you find yourself making decisions mainly because of your, like some people are stuck in the stories they've had in the past, that they're operating from a space of trauma. And if they're stuck in the present, they're operating from a space of stress. And if they're stuck in the future, then they're operating from a space of anxiety. And often it's that intertwined relationship between our trauma, stress, and anxiety that gives us complexity in how we make some, from minor decisions to big decisions, and that there's so much complexity in how this topic shows up. But what I love about what you're sharing is that word trust. That tells me there's some sort of balance in that approach that you've came to terms with, because that means you've made some sort of peace with your past. You're in harmony with your present, and you're excited about what's yet to come. And that's a really beautiful space to be in. That word specifically is very honored in that relationship with money. And believe it or not, as I can imagine you would see around you, very few people infuse the word trust when it comes to money.
That's an interesting point. I have so many questions for you. This is such a exciting thing to be able to talk to you about this. One, I would say, I think I deliberately am putting trust into the conversation because I have spent many years not trusting myself. And then I would do the thing where I still kind of do. I'm very minimal in my life. Like I don't spend much. I don't my footprint is very small. And so I don't need to know exactly what my numbers are. And sometimes I don't think that's very healthy. I just told my manager today, I was like, I think I'm doing that thing where I'm just living a little smaller so that I can make sure that I have some reserve. And maybe that's healthy, but I don't think yet, because I think what I'd like to do is really look at the numbers and consciously understand what I'm doing versus I think I'm fine, right? I think I'm fine. I'm living like this.
That's the missing ingredient, the word consciously. If you're doing something from a conscious, mindful perspective, then there's a reason behind it that you're aware of and that you're intentionally embodying. But in your case, let's explore that together. When you avoid looking at certain numbers, do you find yourself avoiding certain things and yet gravitating towards others, or do you just avoid looking at numbers and money in general? How does that show up for you?
I go through phases of avoiding. I'll avoid looking at all things, but sometimes I'll make sure that I get notifications like this money has been auto withdrawn for my cell phone thing. I'm like, yay, I paid for that. Good. And I have a business manager. So there's also another relationship there that keeps me a little, I could be a little too comfortable for him helping me manage stuff. So I don't want to be that person. And I'm aware that part of me wants to do that. You know what I mean? There's a part of me that's like, you're fine. You don't have to look at it. Don't look at it. And then I'm like, well, I want to be able to garden though. If I don't know how much soil is in my backyard and I don't know how many seeds I have, how am I going to plan out my garden? Yeah.
Yes. One of the things I'll invite you to think about is when you say, I avoid looking at it, what is it that you're actually avoiding? Is it what you're spending money on, or how much is actually coming out of your account, or how you're making money in, or there's something about it that you're truly avoiding? And I'm interested in exploring. Do you have an idea or a sense of what that means?
Two things. Oh, I love this. This is so vulnerable. So one of them is I think I have this story I'm telling myself, because when I first went to college, I didn't know how to manage my money, because I was told all you do is study and do your studious work and we'll take care of everything. And so when I grew up, I never handled stuff. So when I first went to college, it was like, that's all gone. And that was my weekly allowance. And that's all, I spent it so quickly. So I kind of lost confidence. So maybe it's like, am I spending more than I should be spending? And I kind of don't want to look at that. That's one. Yeah. The other one is, am I bringing in as much income as I was before? Yes. That's kind of another one as well, because I think I tie, look, sorry, y'all, not perfect. But I think I tie there's a sense of like, oh, have I been strategic enough and worked hard enough in order to garner the same amount of income I did last time? Because my career is very unpredictable.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I hear you say is that you're avoiding looking into your spending amount because of that future past experience that you're still holding on to. And also because of the volatile nature of your earning potential as an artist, then you're scared about what that amount actually is. So I'm going to go deeper a little bit and ask you these questions. How do you feel your identity as an artist contributed to the relationship you have with money, especially with all this big narrative around you're either following your passion or you're following money, or like there's this awkward relationship about marrying profit and purpose. And that essentially is also even more profound in the space where that purpose is creative and art, and it's a form of expression. Where I've had a friend recently who came across and stumbled across this amazing hobby. He started creating things out of scratch that I would totally pay for because they were so beautiful. And he told me the second he would start charging money for it, he would like his body would stop wanting to do it. Now that there's an expectation of that exchange that would take away from the pleasure of him actually doing this art. So that's my first question for you, is how did your identity as an artist play a role in that relationship with money? And the second, that's a tricky one. How is your identity as an Asian and what you've inherited from your culture played a role in your relationship with money?
Okay. Well,
I love these questions. I really can't wait to hear your answer.
So the first question you said, okay, the relationship with my income and my creativity.
Yes.
When I told my parents that I was going to pursue music after I graduated from college, they said, you have 1 year to show us that you can be professional. And so I think from the get-go, I needed to use my creativity to generate income because that's what they were looking for. And I needed to show that I could do it and I could be successful at it. And so immediately it created this really intense and rigorous relationship with art and money. And so I think it creates like I think my family who loves me, but this kind of answers the second question because my parents are immigrants from Hong Kong. My dad was a janitor and a burger flipper, worked his way through pharmacy school, then worked his way through medical school. He's been very disciplined with money and saving and being a hard worker and pursuing a more stable profession. So I needed to prove that my choice in walking away from my family's path was not going to be disastrous. So there's there's a conversation with my money that involves my place in my family. If that makes sense. And with my creativity, I do have a sense that I in the back of my head, one thought I've had is like, I was like, I think I can do it. I think I can make a living. I don't want to compromise too much. I don't want to compromise the things that matter to me, but I think there's a way. But now that I've reached levels of success, I think I don't want to look at the account because it ties in with, because creativity, especially music, you're like hot one day and you're not. So it's like, it's that money sometimes is a Richter scale of that being wanted or not in the industry, if that makes sense.
Mhm. So there's so much more meaning that you've attributed to what money represents in your life in that sense. It's not just, am I able to pay the bills this month, but it's also, am I valued? Am I wanted? Do people like my art? And your art is an extension of who you are. So if they like my art, then they like me. And if you're attributing this much meaning to what money represents for you, then no wonder there's this intensity about what that topic is for you. And it's no wonder that you would want to avoid at it, because it is intense, and it is sort of, it comes with all these stories wrapped up in it. And we actually are meaning making machines. That's what humans are. We are meaning making machines. And sometimes we need to start kind of challenging the meaning we've attributed to things, because money on its own as an entity is meaningless. And something that actually was created by the human contrast. All these things we projected on it makes it what it is. So my invitation for you would be to kind of start exploring these meanings you've tackled onto that word, and explore how these meanings impacted your behavior, both positively and how they no longer serve you. Because that intensity you started exploring at the beginning about, I needed my creativity to generate income for me to actually own it and go beyond that 1 year that my parents gave me as a deadline. Like, there's a part of that served you in a way. There's, maybe you pushed yourself harder than you thought you were able to, or whichever way it went. But there's also ways in which it hindered you, and that's the intensity it created, and also talked about. So it'll be interesting to explore not just how it served you and how it hinders you, but what's a more serving belief to your identity today, and more so to who you're looking to become and metaform into.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, because it's ooh, my body's heating up. Like when I talk about it, like, I don't know if you do have this too, but like the backs of my arms and the backs of my legs, like, get like this heat glow when I talk about things that like feel really exciting and scary to me. Oh, it's happening again.
I vibrate. That's how my body reacts to it.
Ooh, okay. Where?
My left thigh specifically.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah.
So,
There's areas too, but that's the most intense where I feel it. It's such a random spot, and it got activated last year actually. More so because of my therapy training. I started learning how to, like, the whole idea of tuning into your body to understand how certain things land. Like, that was a foreign concept for me before, because I worked on Bay Street, and Bay Street taught me to use my head and forget about the rest of my being.
so much of just this. Yeah. No wonder we draw aliens sometimes to have these big heads and like these little bodies. I think we're projecting our shadow selves onto Martians. They're like, what do you mean? We have huge hearts, you know? But it's interesting because I've also in certain ways, I have learned and nudged myself to, my brother told me this one thing, and I use it as a mantra sometimes, of high risk, high reward. So I don't have to always force myself to make high risk decisions, but I do allow myself to get experimental with my investments or my money, and allow myself to get a little playful in a sense. I just, when it comes to my personal accounting, it's different. But when I'm doing business, like, or when I'm trying to vie for my business and create more capital so that I can create more art, I have been understanding the beauty of deep relationships with my partnerships and the companies I work with, and pitching ideas. Like, I'm getting into a place where I remember when I was younger, I was like, oh, how do people get those deals? Like, okay, I'm going to be so great that they're going to come to me and they're going to offer these things. But I'm like, I've realized I made a switch in the past 2 years, 3 years, where I'm like, it's the same thing as not waiting for anyone to tell my story. I'm going to tell my story. It's the same thing as that, as not waiting for someone to see my value, but just knowing my value and be like, here's a project, you want to collaborate? And that's kind of changed. So I feel like it's interesting because I have this like almost stilted existence with my money. One side is a little bit like, I don't want to look at my personal accounts. And then the other business, I'm like a little more adventurous, you know, when it comes to my art. And maybe that's part of because I had so much pressure to make income in my first year. So I'm like getting better and better at like finding ways. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth exploring. I want to be mindful of the time because I want to give some time for participants to chip in with their questions or comments in the last 10 minutes or so, because this conversation could get so rich and we can go in a million different directions.
Wow. I love talking to you about it. Thank you for offering your wisdom.
Oh, it's such a purposeful journey for me. When I came across this space of financial therapy, of merging my love for therapy and mental health, but also with practical groundness on how that shows up for us, it was life-changing.
When did that happen? Was recent or?
Well, last year I left the corporate world and started my financial therapy practice. And eventually, 3 of my clients, I had group coaching programs. 3 of them sent me an article that Rhiannon wrote in the Globe and Mail, telling me I should meet this woman because she's speaking my language. And here we are.
Wow. Yeah. That's powerful.
It's synchronistic. See, my left leg confirms the vibration is so my question for you, to wrap things up, actually 2 questions. The first is, I want to bring it back to the phrase your friend said, I love money. If you were to say this right now, tune into your body and say that phrase and tell me how it feels.
I love money.
You can keep a straight face saying
Yeah, I think I was thinking about the way that we do money as a general society and how much harm it creates. So like I was thinking about that.
Isn't that interesting that that's the first thing that came to your mind when you said that? It's like, it's the harm and the pain and the trauma money has caused, not so much the liberation and the freedom and the potential it can provide you. Right. So that's very interesting. That in itself is something that surfaced. But
yeah.
What else surfaced?
It also surfaced like what you're saying, like ever since I had that conversation with my friend who's like, I love money, I want it to flow. And I was like, yeah, why not? Let me just change this entire dynamic I have with money and see what happens. And I did see a more comfortable relationship with my craft, my invoicing, what I charge, talking about money. I like to have more open conversations with my fellow artist friends because artists are trained to not talk about money, which makes us a very good target for undercharging us and paying us in the dirty E word exposure. And so, I think the other thing I would say when I said it is gratitude for being able to work with that entity, having the ability, having found a way to work with money, having found a trade that I enjoy to work with money. That's a deep gratitude that I have. And I understand it's a big privilege.
Absolutely. So I really want to make some space for others to also chip in. This is such a profound topic, and I thank you so much for your vulnerability. It's really not easy talking about that because a lot of times when I ask clients or my friends or whoever to challenge them with that phrase and see how it feels or lands, people feel the justification to jump in and say certain things after that phrase. I love money, but I'm a good person and I want to use it for good people and I want to blah, blah. And it's like, well, you don't say that when you say I love pizza. You don't need to give me a reason why you love pizza. You can just say I love pizza and leave it at that. Why do we feel this rush to justify why we want to love money?
One theory. I want to share one theory. Is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
One. I think because we see some examples of some people who hoard a lot of money to a point of just like more than the entire planet. And I think maybe we're associating money too much with that type of behavior, but that's actually not majority of behavior. I don't know, just a theory.
Well, for every person, it's different. For some, it's because they're projecting that. For others, it's because of the trauma that wealth, or how wealth came to be created. Like there is trauma in the colonization. You talked about that in the way wealth was even created, stealing land and the form of slavery and the trauma across the world. So there's lots of different reasons to why you feel that urge to fill in the blanks of what follows that phrase. And it's a different story for each person based on the family system they grew up in, the culture they come from, the meaning they've attributed to money, because that's a very personal relation. So the theory in my mind is that for each of us, it's a story on its own. But all these stories ultimately can be very limiting. And that's why we need to revisit what these stories are and rewrite them and take ownership back on what that entity means for us in a way that it can actually show up, so we can use it as a way of expressing ourselves and showing up in the world, without keeping ourselves small.
That's deep, because I think you just said there could be discomfort with money because we haven't healed some of the traumas. We haven't acknowledged.
We haven't acknowledged
trauma.
Apologized. We haven't acknowledged. We haven't healed.
Why it hurts sometimes. That's why money hurts sometimes, but it doesn't have to. Because I can imagine a world. I guess maybe the way of healing. Sorry, I know. See, it's so juicy. I can't stop myself. Last thing, perhaps. Okay, so what gives me a sense of like encouragement is that the way that I can build more trust with my money and with money and the concept of it and the trauma that it has caused or is birthed from is to proactively create ecosystems financially that resist the colonized structure.
Beautiful. You just thinking about that as a start, like you just wanting to take ownership and reclaiming your money story for creating a different lineage than the ancestry you've been passed on. It's just a start to something different. And my invitation to you and everybody who's listening is to start really like let everything surface so that we can examine it. We can't fix something we're not aware of. Let's really dig deeper into the areas that we've hid for so long and understand what is this topic, what are all the meanings that we projected on it, and how can we move past it in a way that creates this free flow abundance. This is what conscious economics is really all about, is moving forward in a conscious way, with ways that represent what the new economy looks like. So there's so much more to talk about. I can really literally be here with you overnight. Like there's just so much. But I want to invite you back with us, and I want to invite others to join this conversation, whether it's a comment you have for us, for any me, Rhiannon, or Connie, or questions, or anything you'd like to contribute in the last few minutes here. So you can you can put your comments or questions in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and feel free to contribute to this conversation.
Hi, Asil, it's Mel.
Hi, Mel.
I just had a question for Milk. I've been noticing her tattoo on her wrist, and I'm not sure if it's a fermata or a pause tattoo. I was just curious what exactly it is and that meaning for her.
Thanks for asking. Hi, Mel. Yeah, this is a fermata. When I want to, this is actually related to what Asil was just saying. When I decided that I wanted to become an artist, I wanted to participate in the structure of society, but be free within it, to create a third space, not rejecting, not rejecting or complete immersion, but a way of being in it, but not being of it. The fermata, you probably know what it is, but to explain to everyone here,
Right.
A fermata is a symbol that I loved as a kid when I played classical piano, because classical piano is pretty structured with its rhythm. And when this symbol came up, it gave the musician permission to like hold that note a little longer. And it was to the player's discretion. So it was freedom of choice within structure. And I thought and that's even my artist name, Milk, too, it's my last name backwards and my first two initials. I want to take what my parents gave me and kind of flip it and like make it into my own. And it's what women create to nourish the next generation. So it's like, again, honoring the structure, but also breaking it in a free way. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
I love that.
Written one. Yeah. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Yeah. No,
For you. It's really great question. Have you ever received any flack for identifying as a BLM activist? Were you generally well received across the board, or did some question your intention?
Cassandra, hi. I would say I've gotten comments of like, I feel bad for that. Not feel bad, but I see their unresolved pain and anger. But I've gotten comments like, I used to listen to your music, but once you crossed into this path, I no longer. And I'm like, I really, truly don't understand. However, that person, and it's, an online comment from someone who, it's just hard to understand what the context is. That's what sometimes the limits of the internet sometimes with these conversations can be hard and frustrating. I think that in terms of any question of my intention, I have not experienced it directly, but I did think about this when I started speaking out about my support for BLM. I did question what type of space I should be taking up. And so in general, I haven't received any of that, but that type of questioning perhaps wouldn't be expressed out loud in a comment. I don't know. But I haven't seen that directly in my space yet. Yeah. But overall, I think because I don't know, I think people are willing to build bridges, and they're willing. I think that a lot of the Black artists that I co-write with, there's, Bipolar Sunshine, who I wrote this song with, there was this openness and willingness and grace that he exhibited that I think was beyond anything I could have asked for in that moment to collaborate on somebody's beloved. It was healing for both of us, but we both were pretty, there are things, we both have like shy moments, but we've really leaned into it. And we have a music video of us performing it. And that was the first time we sat in the same room together to sing it. And that was a moment of kind of confirming the solidarity, because we had written over Zoom. So I was like, it was kind of like tense and nervous in the beginning, but once we were in the same room singing the song, that trust was able to expand.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful question and a beautiful answer. So thank you for sharing that. And because we're approaching the end of our session, there's just so much great gratitude for you coming, not just from me, but I can also feel it from everybody in the space, also seeing all the beautiful comments in the chat box. So is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Any last words from you, Connie, for tonight?
I'd say thank you. And I am grateful for the listening. It takes so much energy to listen as well. So I am grateful for that. And please feel free to reach out on Milk Music, at Milk Music on all social platforms. And if you're curious about some of the work we're exploring and doing, you can go to somebodiesbeloved.com. I'm releasing a song about belonging next month. Hopefully it's a way to just put more energy into the world about belonging.
Mm-hmm. We will definitely be sharing these resources you shared with us in our follow-up email to everybody. So don't worry, everyone, you'll have this information in your inbox very, very soon. Milk, again, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. The future is in our hands, and we need to show up. And it in every way we can to make sure it's what we want it to look like. So thank you for showing up and for being you.
You too. I'm so inspired by your thoughts. Thank you.
Oh, Rhiannon's joined us again. Beautiful.
Love you all so much. This was obviously a different kind of lunar because we're not in this space, but it felt so lunary to me. And it's so fun to listen to you guys talk about the money piece. And for anyone who's interested in joining the economic healing sessions, you can sign up and we'll send you a link after this to all of Milk's incredible work. So you can follow along with her because she's doing so much amazing stuff. And it's just an honor. It's an honor to share this full moon with you. Love you so much. And we will see you all again in the next full moon gathering with another special surprise guest. So hope you enjoyed. Take care of yourselves. Be gentle with yourselves. And remember that we're like overhauling a whole system. So it's a long road, but we are giddy up, gallying up and going up the hill. So we'll see you soon, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rhiannon. Thank you, Asil.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.